weeks ago, ex-President Rodrigo Duterte threatened death against Congresswoman France Castro. Yesterday, the Alliance of Concerned Teachers party list representative filed what is the first criminal case against the former president. What does this mean? Can President Duterte actually face jail time for saying something he said 1,000 times before? And can our justice system handle the stress of prosecuting another populist, still popular ex-president? Good evening, I'm John Nery and you are in the public square. There is no mistaking what Rodrigo Duterte said on October 11. Pero ang una mong target dyan sa intelligence fund mo, he is addressing his daughter, Vice President Sara. And then he shifts. Kayo, ikaw, France, kayong mga komunista, ang gusto kong patayin. And then he shifts yet again, turning his attention back to VP Sara. Sabihin mo na sa kanya. After 6 years under Duterte, the argument that the president doesn't really mean what he says, or that we should take him seriously but not literally, we now know that these are bad faith arguments. And in the face of so many deaths, even obscene. We should take Duterte both literally and seriously. This first criminal case filed against him marks a turning point. We are joined tonight by Congresswoman France Castro of ACT, party list. Also joining us in the studio is one of her lawyers, the distinguished former Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, Atty. Tony Vina. Dean Tony, among the many hats he wears, is also president of the Movement Against Disinformation, or MAD. Full disclosure, both Cong France and I share in the advocacy of MAD. Cong France, Dean Tony, thank you for joining us in the public square.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
My first question to you, Cong France, you were at your father's wake, I understand, on October 11 when you first viewed the Facebook post. When did you decide to file a case against President Duterte?
So, during that time, John, I was so shocked. And by that time, naisip ko na mag-file ng case after conferring with my other colleagues in the Makabayan. So, we decided to file a case because this is different na from the normal na mga ranting and when President Duterte was a president. So tingin namin iba na to. Kaya kailangan na nating kailangan na mag-file ng case para matigil na yung mga ganitong mga sinasabi ni dating Presidente Duterte.
In one sense, iba na to because he's no longer president, so no longer enjoys presidential immunity. But iba na to because parang tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung
yes, so iba siya kasi hindi naman siya nagsasabi before ng sa akin or sa ibang colleagues ng parang gusto niyang patayin. More on red tagging, vilification, harassment, mga sexual, mga obscene na mga words, etc. Pero tingin namin iba na tong death threat na malinaw naman na sinabi niya doon sa kanyang programa. So, yeah.
Dean Tony, this is not the first time that a criminal case has been filed against the former president. We've had plunder against Estrada. I think right now there's a new case against Arroyo, graft and malversation. But still, they are ex-presidents with a lot of residual power and goodwill. Before you took on the role as counsel, as co-counsel, what were the considerations you had in mind before you even thought of filing a case against Duterte?
The main consideration for us was accountability. How do we make this ex-president who has always spoken this way, as you said, and has gotten away with it because he was president, how do you make him accountable? What are our legal tools for this? And when Cong France reached out to us in the movement against disinformation, we deliberated. Let's be very clear. This is not about drama. This is not about propaganda. This is very serious. It's very solemn. No? First, because it involves the life and well-being and security of a representative. And it doesn't matter, actually. Ordinary citizens should not experience what you experience. But this is also very solemn because it's an ex-president. It's a landmark case. It's a historic case of a legislator filing against an ex-president of President Duterte facing something like this for the first time since he left power. So we deliberated on that. We discussed it very thoroughly. My main partner is Atty. Rico Domingo, former president of the Philippine Bar, associate, very senior lawyer. And we have a lot of young lawyers that are volunteers of the movement against disinformation. We studied and looked at the law, and it was very clear. This is grave threats under our revised penal code. The penalties increased by the cybercrime law, because this was also a cybercrime. But it's, you know what, when it's an ex-president, it doesn't really matter so much what the number of years. This is 6 months and 1 day to 6 years and 100,000 peso fine. So in a way you say, well, that's very small.
And bailable.
And it's for sure it's bailable. But it's the accountability that you hold that person to. A very powerful person can actually be held accountable for something he did so regularly before, and victimize people, which sometimes ended up with real people dying. So I understand when Cong France says that she felt threatened, because in fact, in real people were threatened that way, and then were killed. Like drug addicts were killed during the time he was president.
So the actual charge is grave threats.
Yes.
Aggravated, to use it in a layman's term, no? By the Cybercrime Prevention Act. So raising the penalties.
Raising the penalty.
So the penalty actually would have been 1 month and 1 day to 6 months.
6 months.
Now you're looking at
6 months,
and 1 day up to 6 years,
yeah.
plus 100,000.
Plus 100,000 pesos.
What do you need to prove or to win the case?
We need to prove that he actually said those words. They, in some platforms, they took it down, but we were able to download it, and I think it's at least in the Gikan Samasa platform. It's still there, so no worries about being able to prove. We have to make the argument legally that these words were in fact the elements of great threat, which is very simple.
That's right.
You make a threat, and it's a serious threat, a malubhang pagbabanta, di ba? So it's really very simple. We have to bring Cong France to testify on how she downloaded it in Quezon City when, that's why we're filing it in Quezon City during the wake of her father. What made her feel that way? Supporting witnesses would say how they noticed how she reacted to this. We don't have to have a lot of witnesses, maybe 1 or 2 people that showed that. So we actually feel it's an open and shut legal case from a legal point of view. You can quibble about, was this a threat?
Okay.
But I always throw this back to other people. If President Duterte, in this context, which is a very serious discussion on confidential funds affecting the political career or future of his daughter, if he tells you, I will kill you or I want to kill you, does it make a difference in terms of how that will make you feel? Of course, it doesn't make a difference. It would, was the argument they say
right.
that it's there's a difference between saying I want to kill you from I'll kill you. I want to kill you is a threat.
And, it's already the year 2023. We've had 7 years of practice. If he had said this in 2016, maybe there would have been some people saying, well, maybe, he was just joking.
Yeah.
Cong, there was an unusual joint statement from the leaders of Congress. Unusual because It included criticism of President Duterte. Many of the signers were allies or former allies of the former president. And it was also unusual because it was full support for a minority, a member of the minority. How did that come about? Were you surprised by it? I think they issued a statement like 4 days or 3 or 4 days after the president's interview.
Well, at first, we were surprised for the leadership to say or to say the statement on support, including my security.
Mm-hmm.
So this is different from before. But of course, we are used naman in the Congress na although we differ in opinions, at the end of the day, we are colleagues. So, kaiba ito, no? Pero nakita natin talaga, no, yung the issue that we raised about the confidential funds. So we're able to push the administration to cut or to to reappropriate the fund for confidential fund in the OVP and the DepEd and other agencies. So we were happy. So natuwa po ako doon sa naging response ng leadership ng Kongreso.
I want to spend some time a little later talking about the connection between that issue, the confidential funds, and this death threat, right? But Kong France, I don't want to put you in the spot, but is it possible that Speaker Martin Romualdez had a hand in this, in the joint statement? This was like a drawing of lines between Sarah and Martin?
Well, in the Congress naman, all that the different colleagues or congressmen are doing in the Congress, it is with the consent of the Speaker, and I know that. And for us, nalaman lang din namin yung support with our minority leader, Representative Libanan, about the support. And also, the Secretary General of the House of Representatives is also vocal in providing security, in supporting, and even I heard also the majority leader, Representative Dalipe, saying that if I will file a case, they will support.
Okay.
So this is unprecedented also.
Yeah, I don't want to say the actual gains, or the actual benefit from a joint statement like that, and then from the full support of Congress.
You know, John, I have another view of it, and my view is as a constitutional law professor. Taught this subject for almost 30 years now. This is also about separation of powers, and this is about protecting the rights of legislator and the rights of the legislator to hold accountable officials and offices in the executive branch on the most important thing, which is how they spend the money of the people.
That's right.
Right? Which was appropriated by the legislature. So any attempt to have a chilling effect on legislators, don't ask these questions, don't go there. It's really a violation of separation of powers. It doesn't really matter.
All right.
I mean, I wish any speaker
Okay.
would do the same thing, regardless of the politics, because what is at stake is not just the minority or just Congressman Castro's ability to interpolate and to question, but it's the whole legislative branch ability to do that, to investigate. All of that is at stake in this particular issue.
Institutional integrity.
Yeah,
no?
that's why it's not about drama. No, this is about departments. It's about this way beyond. There's always say it's landmark, way beyond Congressman Castro and the minority.
What is astounding to me is that this may be the very first time in our history that the use of confidential intelligence funds has been directly linked to extrajudicial killings.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is saying, itong unang
Yeah.
paggamit sa fund na to, patayin natin sila. I mean, again, President Duterte has said the quiet part out loud. No?
And in the same interview, he actually said that he funded through his confidential intelligence funds in Davao, the death squads.
May sinabi rin siyang ganon, di ba?
that's why it's
Later
now-
on.
It's
yeah.
Senator Trillanes immediately had a tape of that
Yeah.
sent to the International Criminal Court.
Yeah, so
Same program,
it is
same-
it is part of your affidavit, if I'm not mistaken. That quote is there also, no, na nabanggit siya. But can we talk about that? Here you have Duterte directly linking CIF to EJK. I mean, that just blows your mind.
Yes, that's why we are very, very critical with the putting of budget to confidential fund kasi hindi na nga natin alam yung ginagawa. Pero buti na lang, sinabi ni President Duterte, no, isa sa mga gamit ng confidential and intelligence fund. So that's why we are against this budgeting confidential and intelligence fund. So kasi we don't know na kung ano yung ginagawa. Okay.
Dintone, your
Yeah,
thoughts?
we know, and we know it's out in the statements of Las Cañas and Matubato, right? The witnesses against Duterte in the International Criminal Court case, from what they've said publicly, that they were paid from the intelligence funds of Davao to do what they had to do, and the DDS, and it would be split up into different amounts, so it would be easier to spend out. So yes, and that's why we really have to bore down on confidential intelligence funds and how it is spent. No? It's not about you're being against national security or, but it's about accountability for the funds that you use, so that we actually know if the funds are being spent properly, right? So the move of the House of Representatives to move that now to defense and to the Coast Guard, given the tensions now with China, is probably a good move. But it doesn't stop it from them being responsible and accountable for how they spend that. I mean, I don't think you have to say, for example, if you have intelligence people that are looking at China, you send them to Hong Kong or something. I don't think you have to mention that and say that. But you can still hold accountable. There's still auditing that can be done. So we should really stop this practice of confidential, even for the office of the president. I think.
Can we spend a little more time on this, yung confidential and intelligence funds, Is there something in constitutional law that will allow the Supreme Court to say, actually, that's unconstitutional? Or
Well, it's a lump sum, and so, I would say there's a basis for questioning it and declaring it unconstitutional. In the same way that pork barrel, before the PDAF, was accepted to the extent of the small amounts of money, 5 million, 10 million, but it became hundreds of millions, then it really became a questionable practice, right?
Okay.
Because now the way it has developed is confidential intelligence funds is a way to get the money from public scrutiny, from accountability, and just spend it as you wish, including for killing people, as we have seen now. So that has to stop. And it's in the billions now, in the hundreds of millions, certainly. So that's the analogy that I have. When it was smaller amounts of money, you can give discretion I get that, right? When you are a congressperson, representative, you have constituents that come to you for hospitalization, for all sorts of things. So I sort of got that when it was like $1 million, $2 million a year, that kind of thing. That you have. That it was called the Countrywide Development Fund then, which was very, very small. Senator, Speaker Mitra was the one that developed that on the way to his candidacy, right? And the Supreme Court actually said that's okay because it's a small amount of money. It's recommendatory, they say. But by the time of PDAF, it was hundreds of millions. So the court said, no, you cannot do this. So I think it's something similar here. When in the past, it was just small amounts of money that allows the president and but it should have been limited from the very beginning to the president and to security officials, right? And not really DepEd. Why would they have intelligent funds in DepEd? But then, now that it's become as large as it's become, billions, right? The president,
Yeah.
more than a
Yeah.
billion. How can you
4.56 billion.
How can you allow the president to spend 4.6 billion without accountability?
And not just the president. I mean, the mayor of Davao.
The mayor of
half a
Davao,
billion every
yes,
year
during the
for-
time of the vice president when she was a mayor. So the confidential fund also ballooned
400
from 100 million to 460 billion. So how would you
Million,
yeah, how 460 million.
And then you
So,
compare to
yeah.
other
Cities like
LGUs, diba? Like
QC
1 million,
or-
1 million.
Yes. And we feel that the confidential fund and any fund for that matter, this is a public fund and it should be scrutinized. It should be the head of office or agency should be accountable and be transparent in any public funds. Yeah.
What is your sense of the public pulse here as far as confidential funds are concerned?
So we feel that, for example, the joint circular of the COA, the DBM, and other agencies that form that joint circular is still not enough. So that's why we have filed a House resolution to investigate the use of the confidential fund, particular in Davao. And also, this would also bring out a policy, a law maybe, that would guide our agencies, the local government, GOCC, on how to use properly the confidential fund if it is deemed necessary.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like we're fighting the current war using the methods of the old war, I want to ask you, is there a possibility that you can have the equivalent of like 1 million people march, but not this time against the pork barrel, but against confidential intelligence funds? Do you think there's that kind of groundswell?
Well, during when we are discussing the budget, no, in the House of Representatives, so we saw the clamor of our people. So nakita natin even in social media, in the mobilization in Congress. So nakita talaga natin na there's a possibility that mobilize people with these confidential funds.
Kong, Dean, bakit galit na galit si Digong dito? I mean, he's been on that show since his retirement. But I think this might be one of the first times that he, issued a death threat again. And very specific, talking to you, no? It's very characteristic of him, no? He shifts voice and talks to you. Bakit siya galit na galit? What do you think? What were the triggers?
Para bang tinanggalan mo siya ng discretion. Kasi itong confidential fund is being given in cash. Na we don't know kung paano nila ginagamit. No? Parang inagawan sila ng kanilang discretion doon sa fund. So that's why, galit na galit. Di na siguro nila magagawa yung nagagawa nila with the use of confidential and intelligence funds.
That day, Kong, October 11, had the House already decided to strip the confidential funds from Vice President Sara's 2 offices?
Yeah. So I remember the small committee already decided to strip the confidential fund. Not only for the 2 agency, no, yung OVP, tsaka
And,
yung
Department of Education.
DepEd. Also kasi yung DA, DICT, and
Yeah.
DFA. So
DFA,
hindi
they also
naman
asked.
talaga, ito ay sa OVP lang, tsaka sa DepEd. So talagang talagang before October 11, nag-decide na kasi. So yun ang nag-trigger doon sa galit siguro ni former President.
Dean, and Kong, of course, the legislative process, it ain't over until it's actually over. Is it possible to smuggle the funds back through the bicameral
Senate.
Yeah, sa Senate.
or in the Senate?
So we have to watch out for what
Yeah.
happens in the Senate, right? So that's really I hope the attention will stop the Senate from actually doing this. It's a matter of principle. Hindi naman sininggle out si Sara.
Yeah.
Diba? But all the agencies that do not have security mandates, diba, as their main mandate should not have intelligence funds. And that shift those to what's more important. So as a first step, because I think eventually we should really abolish the confidential and intelligence funds as a concept, that the concept being you give this money and I'm not accountable to you. I don't have to account for it. I just have to say I spent it, right? That's really what confidential intelligence funds is.
Yeah.
You can have intelligence funds, but still be accountable for it.
Yeah.
I spent this for this particular. You can hide those. You can have code, right? Or it can just be a selected group of. In the U.S., what they have is
security.
they have a Senate and House Intelligence Committees
Over-
that are actually given all the information on how they spend the money, right? Everyone has to have security clearances, etc. But they know how the money is spent, because that's so important. That really is the priority here. So I hope in the end that the House of Representatives would have learned from this.
Is it possible that President Duterte was sending a signal not just to you but to the senators? Is that possible?
So that is
like
possible.
Sort of galvanizing his base there?
So that is possible kasi the budget deliberation is not yet over until the last second in the bicameral committee. May mga nagaganap pa diyang mga negotiation. So we have to be vigilant at bantayan natin katulad nung ginawa natin sa House.
Offense is the best defense. And that's Duterte is a master of that. Right? President Duterte is a master of that, and in a way, this is schooling her daughter, who is not a master of that. You can see that Sarah was shaken by all of this and could not even respond in Congress when asked. She had to call on a secretary or but she herself would not explain why she needed that, what is its purpose, etc.
And given their relationship, which is familiar knowledge to many of us, it's very possible that he didn't ask her. He just did it on his own.
In that interview, he says that they saw each other on an occasion, I think a family occasion, and she said this, he said this, he said that, etc. But wasn't very clear about how VP Sara responded to all his suggestions, which is what he said publicly.
I see. Dean, you and other lawyers from MAD, including your chair, Attorney Rico Domingo, have also filed other cases, right? Involving disinformation against Lorraine Badoy Partosa, defending Atom Araulio. You even have an initiative, I hesitate to call it a case yet, against Meta, against Facebook.
Yes, it's a case, but it's with the Data Privacy Commission for Kong Corrales, the journalist.
Okay, all right, okay. Is your defense of Kong France part of that, or like separate?
No,
how does it fit into what
it's
what
consistent
you're
with
doing?
that because it's an offshoot of red tagging, which we have identified as one of the major ways of disinformation in the Philippines. But also because the president, in doing that, is also waging disinformation about confidential intelligence funds, and sort of trying to justify it when it cannot really be justified. So this is really that was the first question we asked. Is this, because we don't accept, we're not a human rights organization, by the way. So we do not necessarily lawyer for all human rights issues. There are other groups that do that, and UPL, FLAG, for example, are the most active in that. We are a movement against disinformation. Not all are lawyers, but we have a strong legal group because the founders were lawyers and deans of law schools. And we, from the very beginning, we had an analysis of what was the problem in the Philippines. It's people, red tagging or accusing other people, especially the government, doing that without any basis, and we need to put a stop to that. So this is one of those. We've filed criminal cases, we've filed administrative cases, we've filed civil cases. We're very busy. John.
Yeah, I was at this information conference in Kuala Lumpur, and people were really looking at the Philippine example, the litigation as a way to fight back against disinformation. A question for both of you. I actually saw this on your Facebook feeds. I don't know, I'm not sure now which one I was reading, but somebody who seems to be a supporter said, but won't this play into Duterte's hands regarding the ICC? Once you have a case like this, they can say, well, the wheels of justice are grinding.
No.
No.
So for both of you, Dean first.
No, in the first place, that will in ICC will move. Maybe slowly, too slow for us, but it will move, right? And when it finally moves to arrest warrant or summons to Duterte, it needs the cooperation of the Marcos government. The Marcos government will have to make a political and a legal decision, right? But it will be mainly a political decision, whether they'll collaborate with the ICC. Legally, I think they should. It's very clear because we were members of the ICC during the time these alleged crimes were committed. So they should. And so if they do, then the case will move on. This particular case wouldn't matter. That guy, I saw that, and I think he means well. Was talking about extradition. In extradition, kasi you are, the practice is you don't get extradited until your case in where you are now is actually resolved, right? Especially if your home state like the Philippines. But that is also a political decision. We always extradite people, even if we want to. So there's no legal justification. There's no legal mandate for it's a political decision that the president has to make.
Kong, let me tweak my question for you. What has the response been from your friends, your family, your supporters, your constituents? Do they think that, this is a bold move, it's unprecedented? Does that put you in greater danger?
Yeah.
Or does it put you, somehow like the best offense is the best defense, might put you in a better defensive position?
When I am contemplating filing a case, my siblings is already supporting me. So sabi nga nila, dapat manang mag-file ka talaga ng case. So, but of course, my security should be tight. They said, bumabangga ka sa pader, but still be very powerful. So it has an effect on my, syempre, on my security. I'm also every day natatakot din ako because of what is happening. Minsan may mga papasok din sa bahay para patayin yung mga aktivista. So na-imagine ko yun every time na matutulog ako at magpapahinga. So I have the support naman with my colleagues din sa teacher sector, sa education sector, sa multisec. So I'm very happy naman that I had that was support.
Thank you. Maybe one last question for each of you. I've always wondered why there was no disbarment case filed against Duterte, who of course is a lawyer. I thought that it would have been a great test case to find out the limits of presidential immunity. If you file, even when he was president, file for disbarment, even while he was president, since he was a lawyer. Is that something?
Generally, the immunity from suit is from everything, right?
So even...
he's not removed as president if he's disbarred. So
yeah.
In that sense, it can proceed, right? But we sort of just interpreted it that this, but there's nothing to stop that from now. I mean, if bar groups want to do that, I mean, certainly we're hoping for us, the lawyers that are involved here, that are fairly with good reputations, probity. Not that there's anything wrong with activist lawyers. We love them also and collaborate with them, but we're not necessarily activist lawyers. As I said, we're quite conservative. We're professors of law, but me and attorney Rico, we teach judges. I teach judges a lot. So very, very sober about this thing. So we should not be attacked. But if we are, then we can actually we have options as lawyers in the discipline, right? See, the problem it's usually related to a legal proceeding that you are disbarred.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? So if this goes to court, goes to preliminary investigation, President Duterte, as a lawyer himself, would have to respect all of those processes, right?
Yeah.
So that is not held accountable, because you can be held accountable for the language that you use as a lawyer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Last question, Kong. I mean, despite the death threat and now, of course, the distraction of the lawsuit, what's the next step for you as far as the confidential and intelligent funds are concerned?
Well, we still have to be very vigilant in the in Senate. Of course, we will submit our amendments in the Senate regarding the whole 2024 budget, including our amendments in the confidential funds. So that's what we're doing. And then number two, we have filed House resolution kasi to investigate the confidential funds and CIF, so that we can come up with a law, okay, to guide the agencies for that. So yun pa lang din yung ginagawa natin. And hopefully, doon nga sa case sa ICC, we have filed also resolution to allow the ICC to investigate.
One last quick follow-up. Where is the majority on this issue of confidential and intelligence funds? Do you think you'll get the super majority to reconsider the use of?
Well, in the small committee, they have already decided to cut the confidential of several agencies. We still have critics, like for example, why do they have to add confidential funds to NSC and NICA, wherein we have several examples of human rights violations initiated by those security agencies. And also confidential fund for Pag-asa rehabilitation. Why do we have to use the confidential fund for rehabilitation? It could be capital outlay or miscellaneous MOOE or personnel. So marami pa kasi may mga amendments by the small committee that we do not agree. So yun, but we are confident na talagang tatanggalin na nila yung confidential fund doon sa OVP at saka sa DepEd.
Okay, that's a lot of food for thought. Thank you, Congresswoman France Castro and Counsel and former Dean Tony Lavinia. The strength of the public square is tested precisely in crises like these. Thank you again. That's it for us tonight. As always, the next step for engaged citizens is to take a more active part in rebuilding our democracy. See you in the public square. This is John Nery. Thank you and good night.